Hello, goddesses. Thank you for last night's enlightenment circle. It was enlightening on many levels. And I was having a little reflection this morning in the shower, and a download came to me that I would like to share with you about the narrative of how we talk about divine feminine and divine masculine, how we talk about the toxic patriarchy, which is the toxic masculine and toxic feminine. It gets all caught up in patriarchy because it's certain behaviours. And then somewhere in the middle, there's this earthly masculine, isn't there? And when this came to me, it was kind of to help make sense of how do we know what is toxic? How do we know what is divine? And everything's on a continuum, isn't it? You know, we're not always divine. Sometimes maybe we have toxic views about something, but then sometimes maybe we're in the middle. And what made me think about it was when Julie was telling us about the conversation she was having with her partner, who was kind of telling her what needed to be done and she shouldn't put up with this. And he was doing that out of care and concern for her. Was it toxic behaviour? Probably not. Was it divine? Probably not. Was it earthly? Absolutely. So a little diagram came to me, was downloaded to me, and I want to share it with you. It's not great, but you'll get the idea of it. So we have a seesaw. We've got this line here. And think of it as a little seesaw. And at the moment, the seesaw is just straight, so we can see what's going on. And here we have divine, we've got earthly, and we've got toxic. And the seesaw can go down and it can go up on either side. And if it's balanced, then it kind of means that the earth and the planet is in stasis. Things are balanced, things are okay. Yes, there's some toxicity, but it hasn't overtaken the divine. And this is just to help us understand that not everything is toxic and not everything is divine. And there are shades of this. So the divine, we know when we're feeling our divine self because we have balance, harmony, flow and peace. And there are other things that will make you feel divine, but those are the key things that were given to me. And we recognise divine because there's a high vibrational frequency. We're being intuitive. We feel spiritual. We feel liberated and free. And we are non-judgmental. And divine is directed by the soul and heart, individually and collectively. That isn't everything about the divine, but that's what I was given in the download that helps us understand the narrative of how we're going to talk about it in our circle. At the other end, in terms of I have to move around, in terms of the toxicity, it's represented through hatred, conflict, arrogance, and discrimination. It's a low vibrational frequency. It is deeply held conditioning, rigid attachment, self-obsessed, and driven by conscious mind only. And that's being cautious about it. Sorry, the phone rang. That's being cautious about it because we don't want to do is over egg toxicity and give it more attention than it deserves, because what you get is what you focus on. But this highlights how we can see toxicity. So if you're in a situation and you're wondering, does it feel toxic? And some of these apply, then yes, there is something toxic in there. And then in the middle, and all these shades all along, we have what's it like living an earthly life between divine and toxic. And the things we have to cope with are conditioning, triggers, upbringing, society, the laws that we live in. But the difference from being divine and toxic comes down to liberation and freedom and deeply held conditioning and rigid flexibility. So when you're liberated and free in your thinking and liberated and free in what you choose to believe, you're walking the path of the divine. If you've got views that are so absolutely rigid that that's all you can deal with. There can be nothing else within any other consciousness within you. That's when it becomes toxic. I'll try and write this up a bit more neatly and take a photo of it and send it to you. But I wanted to share that with you as a way for us to not have labels, but as I said, have a narrative around how we identify divine. So it's not that there's divine feminine and divine masculine. There is the divine. There's a divine way of being. And within that divine way of being, we sometimes, we have the divine feminine that's making decisions and choices from the soul, and we use our divine masculine energy to take actions for those. So instead of it being one or the other, it's kind of, there's the path of the divine, there's a path that is toxic, and somewhere in the middle, all of us humans trying to figure it out. The second thing that came to me as well was, when we're talking about belief and we say we believe it and we fake it till we make it until we can actually integrate that belief into all of our being. We intellectually have a belief about something. I intellectually believe there is another world, there is energy within the cosmos that responds to us and that helps us co-create in this world. That's the belief I had. And I probably intellectually had that for a long time in my life before, 15, 20 years ago, I finally integrated it into my being and it became part of my life and how I am and who I am. So last night when we said, I believe, and we did those little mantras, I'd like to shift that based on the guidance I've got today. And instead of saying, I believe, say, I choose to believe. Because again, I choose to believe takes out some of the rigidity. It gives us the option to choose a different belief when we learn more, know more, or learn different and know differently. So we don't stick with the same beliefs throughout our lifetime, and that is okay. And this makes me think of, actually, I remember seeing an interview with, is it Tim Cook? Is he the CEO of Apple? And when he first started working with Steve Jobs, he thought Steve Jobs was crazy because he was constantly changing his mind. And Tim Cook didn't understand, how can we run a business when you keep changing your mind? But what Tim came to realise about Steve was, when he got more information, when he learnt more, when he knew more, that's when he changed his mind about things, because more new information was coming in and he was open enough to say, right, this is a different way that we can create things. Now, he was creating something material and very, very earthly, but the same principle applies. I hope that makes sense. So instead of let's say, I believe, I choose to believe, right now I choose to believe, and we keep ourselves open and we don't have that rigidity of the toxic, and we can stay within a divine path of what we choose to believe. I hope all that makes sense to you, and thank you again for last night, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye.